I am the black sheep of the family by working in media. But
by having a personality.
I don't know, it'll be spontaneous, to be honest. I sometimes just go into weekends like not knowing how they'll
So
start
Gen
and how they
Z.
end. Yeah.
You spoke about there that previously the ECB has run this tournament centrally. You've now got 8 new stakeholders around the table with their own competing interests.
That's the first Star Wars reference on the podcast. I don't think it'll be the last.
Probably not.
It's the first time Darth Vader has been on the podcast.
He's very welcome.
I have noticed over recent weeks and stuff, they have brought in some interesting sponsors, and I imagine that's part of their selling strategy.
I asked him who threw the pizza at Sir Alex. He said no comment.
Bit of an anticlimax.
Best bit of investigative journalism I've ever done. Hello and welcome to the SportsPro Podcast, the show all about where the sports industry is heading next. My name's Ed Dixon, I'm SportsPro's Deputy Editor, and I am joined once again by SportsPro's Technology Editor, Steve McCaskill. Hello, Steve.
Hiya, good to be here again.
SportsPro reporter Josh Sim. Hello, Josh.
Hi, Ed.
And SportsPro Head of Editorial, Sam Carp. Hello, Sam.
Smashed it this time, mate. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Yeah, good to be here.
If there ever is a bloopers of the SportsPro podcast, me being able to not say SportsPro Head of Editorial, Sam Carp. Just for the record, that's not me opposing the appointment. I want to make that clear.
None taken.
Just sort of one of my many flaws, essentially. Anyway, if we were here to talk about my flaws, this would be a very long episode. Now, gents, the old saying goes, the longer you can look back, the further you can look forward. I've no idea who said that. Probably
You did just now, to be fair.
It was probably Churchill, and maybe it was Gianni Infantino. I don't know. Maybe it was a member of the SportsPro senior management team at a strategy day. Who knows? But with that saying in mind, we're going to be casting our eye back to July when the inaugural SportsPro Investment Summit took place in London. Brought together over 200 industry leaders, investors and key stakeholders to explore how new capital is shaping the future of sports and where the money's going and why. And hot off the press, we can also announce that the Investment Summit is going stateside in 2026 as part of our flagship US event, SportsPro New York. If you want to find out more about that, all you have to do is head to sportspro.com and go to our calendar page, or just Google SportsPro New York 2026. Back to the here and now. I'm not going to ask you how many billions of dollars of assets under management the firms had that had attended the investment summit in London. It was a fair few. But we do have the chance to reflect and pick out some of our highlights. Is everyone happy for me to go first?
You can, yeah. Did you? I was just going to ask everyone, what do you think? Did you have a nice time at the event? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was a new venue, wasn't it? Yeah, it was very nice. Good catering. I know that's.
I felt I
know that's not what you were asking. I understand.
It was good. It's always crucial and a staple of SportsPro events. To be fair, good catering. I felt quite overdressed. It was the first SportsPro conference where I've worn trainers, and I still felt overdressed actually.
Yeah, I can't do it. Speaking of Gianni Infantino, I've not quite got to the suit and trainers look. I mean, if I'm not wearing a tie, I can do it, but everything else, no, not for me. I thought it was a really good event. So my brother and my dad are both accountants, so I am the black sheep of the family by working in media. But
by having a personality.
My brother might be listening. So I've
very welcome on the podcast.
Get a personality.
To be fair, he does have sporting opinions.
God, maybe not then.
But for me, I've got my financial literacy is all through osmosis, and also working in sport and speaking to startups. So I found it fascinating to hear more about the side that I don't necessarily hear as much about. So investment in franchises, other bits of the industry. I really took away a lot and learned a lot. I'm fairly comfortable talking about tech investments, media investments, but other side. And also some things that we just hear naturally through sport. There's never been so much interest in the business of sport in mainstream media. And some of the people that were there, for example, represented from the 100, for example, that's all very interesting. So yeah, learned a lot, really enjoyed it, and yeah, lunch was fantastic.
I feel I've slightly shown my hand by making a pitch for the SportsPro Catering Summit. I've still got flashbacks to the SportsPro Live event when the only option was vegan, and I have no problem with veganism, but I needed complex carbs and high fat meats, and I was not provided with either of them over the 2 days.
We'll get you some Huel for next time.
Oh no.
There's also a slot open for a caterer for the podcast, so we're open there as well.
Josh, what did you think of it?
It's hard to follow up Steve's answer, but no, it was interesting. It's always interesting to go to a different SportsPro event with a different cast of people, frantically looking at people's name tags and what company they're from, and then quickly having to Google them rapidly. But no, it was good. It was a really a lot of interesting sessions, a lot of interesting takeaways, and I think it's becoming such a big topic now that obviously there's an enthusiasm to talk about it, and it was quite clear in the room.
The caliber of speaker was top notch, has to be said. People like George Pine, etc. So, yeah, I think it was a fantastic first edition. Just to sum it all up.
Yeah, good stuff. And there was a lot of actually timely stuff going on during the investment summit, and one of those was the 100, because the sale of stakes in 6 of the teams has now been completed. That's the London Spirit, the Birmingham Phoenix, the Manchester Originals, the Northern Superchargers, the Southern Brave, and the Welsh Fire. Investments in the Oval Invincibles and Trent Rockets are yet to be completed, but we have been told by the ECB that they remain on track. The sales in the 8 teams are set to raise, I think it's more than £500 million. Investors include IPL teams, the CEOs of Google and Microsoft, various private equity firms. It's quite a stellar cast list. Another of those is Kane International, who've agreed to pay a reported £40 million for a 49% stake in the Rockets. So I managed to sit down with Kane CEO Jonathan Goldstein at the Investment Summit to find out a bit more about that deal. What was it about the 100 that made it an appealing investment opportunity?
Well, I think if you step back and say, I love cricket, I've always loved cricket, it's been a huge passion of mine for the whole of my life. And I felt for many, many years that English cricketer was underexploited commercially. And I think the ECB started the 100 and they've done a great job for 4 years. And you don't often get an opportunity to join an organisation, to join a competition, which you think's got a lot of opportunity. So that's really what piqued our interest collectively. And obviously, together with my partners, we're involved in various sports. And we see cricket as a massive growth opportunity over the coming years.
When you entered exclusivity for the Rockets, you said you were looking to elevate the team's commercial and experiential offerings. How do you plan to do that?
Well, I think if you speak to the Notts people, they'll tell you that they sell more merchandise and sell more tickets for the 100 than they do for very many of the Notts individual games in Trent Bridge. And what we'll be looking to do is to help them take that to the next level, to improve the product on the day, to improve the fan experience, to improve the commercialization, to improve the merchandising and sponsorship arrangements. You know, they've been run centrally by the ECB up until the end of this season, and a lot of the rights are going to revert to the teams for next year. So our job, together with the team at Notts, is to make sure that we capitalise on that. And we maximise the opportunity and we create the opportunity to invest further into the team, invest further into the fan experience, and hopefully that will create a perfect product for everybody.
Jonathan, if you're listening, I apologise how much I was looking at my phone during that interview. I didn't have my contact lenses in, and that's my excuse. I apologise. But thank you for talking to us.
We've all been there, to be fair.
I've been there several times and I still haven't learned my lesson. Guys, is anyone here not surprised by how much money the 100 teams fetched?
I think I was surprised when the initial reports of the figures came out, given that they're effectively assets created from nothing, perhaps arguably as an opportunity cost from the rest of cricket. But I think once it became clear the nature of the individuals investing in it and also the wider appetite for franchise investment, someone like Sachin Adela at Microsoft, who's well known for his love of cricket, investing in London Spirit, for example. I mean, that's these are blue chip investors eager to be a part of something, and also uniquely for UK sport, it's a closed shop, so I think that also contributes to it. So maybe right at the start of the process, wondering where it would go, but I think once it became clear where this was going, absolutely not.
I think interesting in your interview there, Jonathan didn't seem to give much indication that Trent Rockets were going to be one of the 2 teams with their deals still to be done. I mean, obviously at the time of recording anyway, but I think that's quite interesting.
I think they had the option to extend, I think, to wait a bit longer. So
yeah, it's been a while already, to be fair. But I mean, I think that's kind of interesting though, just the time it's taken for this, and they've been quite, confident that it's all going to get done in time, and they've been like, yeah, just a few things to iron out. 8 teams we're selling, lots of details, lots of legal processes to go through. But I think it's also kind of, he spoke about there that previously the ECB has run this tournament centrally. You've now got 8 new stakeholders around the table with their own competing interests. We see that in the Premier League, for example, all the time. That's like a completely new challenge for the ECB in English cricket that hasn't been there before. And I think it's no surprise really that the identity of one of the teams was the Oval Invincibles. Reliance, the owners of them, obviously Reliance is run by India's richest family, and bringing them into the 100 is probably the one where there's the biggest opportunity in terms of the doors that they can open for the tournament. So I imagine that kind of, the reason that they're one of the ones still doing that deal is because they're trying to figure out how much say they can have in things, how much involvement they can get. And they're probably saying to the ECB, we're going to open all these doors for you. What are you going to give us in return? So I think that's kind of an interesting thing that's going on here, and that point that Jonathan made about previously run centrally, now reversing back to the teams, that's going to be a really interesting dynamic to follow.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much influence the new investors will want to exert over the 100, whether it's sort of superficial stuff like team name changes or fundamental sort of tweaks to the tournament's format. Josh, do you think either of those are likely?
I'm not too sure they'll rush into making changes from the off. I think they've said they'll wait until, in terms of expansion at least, obviously they have that Sky TV deal until 2028, I think. So they still have, I guess, a few years of testing years to sort of work out, make sort of small incremental changes before then, I guess, once that deal comes up for negotiation with Sky, then sort of going full force with some of the changes, that wide scale changes. But yeah, I don't know if the investment, I don't know if people see like a huge, other than obviously the commercial partners and sponsorship deals, I'm not entirely sure if there'll be too many big changes people will visibly, well, I guess will notice in a way that affects the product until that Sky deal comes up for negotiation again.
Yeah, I think that Sky deal will be a big litmus test of what's going to happen. Whether we see it revert to a 2020 tournament called the 100, for example, whether we see new...
That would be weird.
That would be strange.
The 200.
But,
still doesn't work.
Expansion, new partners. I think, just to sum up again, it feels like since we started this process, there have been a lot of changes to the deal. And, you started with a quote, Ed, that you didn't know was probably, this is a quote from Darth Vader: "I altered the deal, pray I don't alter it further." So in terms of
That's the first Star Wars reference on the podcast. I don't think it'll be the last.
Probably not.
It's the first time Darth Vader has been on the podcast as well.
He's very welcome.
Yeah. So, it'd be interesting to see what rights they want in exchange. And again, as you said, Sam, for in the case, for example, of Reliance with Oval Invincibles, what doors they open in terms of building league out even further.
Yeah, Sam, you were a busy bee at the investment summit. You spoke to a couple of people. You put the rest of us to shame. Who was the first of those?
Yeah, I did 2 interviews compared to your one, Ed. Really.
Well, you're twice as good.
Double the work. Yeah. Yeah. So we're about to hear from Mervan Suaso, who is the president of Como 1907, who've had a pretty remarkable rise over the last few years. They were in Serie D as recently as the 2018-19 season and had their first season back in the top flight in Serie A last year, and that's kind of happened on the back of a significant investment from the Hartono brothers, who are basically part of Indonesia's richest family. So essentially spoke to Mervan about that investment, about the return to the top flight, and kind of the unique business model that they have that's contributed to that.
It would be very, very difficult to grow as a business if we remain in the second division. So they said, once you're in the business, might as well push it to get to the Serie A, and that's where you can actually push the business as wide as possible. Now we're entering our second year in Serie A. They could not be more right. Opportunities opened much faster, much bigger. International growth exceeded more than our expectations, and now into our second year, I think we're experiencing accelerated growth more than ever.
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting as well because football clubs traditionally have had 3 revenue streams. You've had the match day income, sponsorship, and then the share you get from the media rights from the league. It's slightly different at Como, it seems. Can you talk us a little bit about the business model that you're implementing there?
the most important part for us, I mean, the fastest one that's actually grew was the merchandising side, the retail. Merchandising pertains to only maybe the football club items, but we realized that they would be linked to the club's performance up and down, a bit too risky. Having an asset or a brand like Como, we realized that, you know what, we are not a football club that's building a brand. We are actually a brand that happens to have a football club. So we then quickly associate ourselves with Lago di Como itself as our main master brand, so to speak, and then the football club sits beneath. And when we do that, yes, our retail revenue then has been growing incredibly well, and that sets us apart.
Lake Como, what a dump.
Yeah, to be honest, like throughout that interview, part of me was wondering, why has no one done this before? But I don't know how closely any of you guys have followed the Como 1907 story. It feels like there's been a lot of buzz and PR and media around them over the past few years, because it is quite a unique approach, and there's been a lot of kind of, you know, A-listers involved and high profile, you know, football football greats involved in that story as well. Greats, maybe that a bit far, Pepe Reina. But yeah, how closely have you guys kind of followed that over the past few years?
So, relatively close. I mean, Como's previous contribution to football really is where a lot of the Inter and AC Milan players live. But obviously it's a picturesque ground, and you know, as I mentioned last week, within a few seconds of meeting anyone, I used to live in Switzerland, so it used to be the closest.
He's mentioned it again.
I know.
Here we go.
Exactly. And so it's very close to the border, so it's aware of the football club. But more recently, you're right. I don't know why it's not been done before. We've had people try to create boutique clubs before. I think that was Flavio Brettore's attempt with QPR, for example, which
not quite the same, is it?
I mean, I reckon Shepherd's Bush has better takeaways than Como.
Shebu, is it?
Oh, Shebu, yeah. The Defectors World, Como doesn't have that either.
I feel like that's sort of an alternate universe when it's kind of like, oh yeah, Flavio Briatore was owned QPR.
But you have seen clubs try to become fashion brands as well. For example, look at you have to look at Serie A or Serie B for Venezia, for example. I think, you know, maybe Monaco have perhaps been a little bit like that without having the same kind of traction. But in terms of this club being taken over by, you know, for one reason and turning something else, then getting all the players involved, you're right. I'm not sure why it's not happened sooner. Looking at nice, you know, going for a location first, having a football club there, getting tourism, getting high profile people along, and of course being where it is in Como, you're going to get some A-listers, not just sporting A-listers.
Yeah, and I think that point you made before about it being the place of choice for Inter and AC Milan players is that's kind of the challenge that you'd have if you were a sort of football club in that area, and the way that they're going about it by trying to position themselves as a premier sports tourist destination basically means that you're not relying on building a fan base in that area around Milan, where everyone is probably going to be supporting AC or Inter Milan, and I think most of their ticket holders, I say most of, but I think 40% of their ticket revenue comes from international fans, which is, can't imagine there's many other football teams in Europe who have a similar ratio like that. So I think it's pretty smart the way they've gone about it. Whether it's sustainable, I don't know. But yeah, Josh, I don't know what you think, because you're the man who keeps his eye on the on the kind of the European football leagues outside of the Premier League the most.
That's my residency.
Did you lose interest? Did you lose interest when they got promoted? You're like, oh, I'll sell out.
They've gone into mainstream now.
Yeah.
You liked them before they were cool.
like Union Berlin.
Exactly. I didn't think I knew much about their commercial business. I knew that they had interesting. We'll talk about sporting A-listers. Dennis Wise was their CEO briefly. They brought in, I think, Cesc Fabregas.
A-listers is a stretch. We'll give it to you.
Cesc Fabregas was most recently. I think he still is their head coach. And Thierry Henry.
Sought after, I think.
Yeah, and Thierry Henry is a shareholder as well. So they've brought in some of the game's greats to sort of guide their project, along with obviously Moen having the commercial know-how. Admittedly, it's their commercial side. Like I said, it's not something I've sort of kept up with. But I have noticed over recent weeks and stuff, they have brought on, since we've done that, since you recorded that interview, they've brought on Uber as a partner, I think, Revolut. They've brought in some interesting bigger brand sponsors, and I imagine that's part of their UPI, their sort of selling strategy when they're going to these brands.
I think the fact it's in Serie A is also an important factor, because the amount of times we've seen American investors going to Serie A thinking that they can solve a lot of the issues like new stadiums, the fan bases and other commercial avenues, and quite frankly failed in most of those cases. Going to someone like Como, going to a smaller team, going to somewhere that is doesn't have a strong, as large a fan base. I think that's important.
Cheaper as well.
Yeah, I think that's been a huge factor. I mean, the only other thing, again, I mentioned Venezia before. You had Silvio Berlusconi at Monza, also trying to build a club up like that. So I think that's a significant factor in all this.
Yeah, I should just add, what was quite funny, I did ask Mervan during the interview, what is it that makes Serie A so attractive to foreign investors? And I should also mention that that our audience can watch an extended version of the interview on our YouTube channel, which is live now. But his response was, I don't know, which I thought was great. But I think that if anyone caught his on-stage session as well.
My brain inadvertently sort of gone into his. I don't know.
It was kind of, I don't know if anyone caught his on-stage interview, but I think he got by far and away the most laughs out of any speaker over the course of the investment summit. But well worth watching that full interview, I think, because he comes out with some kind of answers that you maybe wouldn't expect from the president of a top-flight football club to kind of come out with.
Speaking of Cesc Fabregas, name drop of the episode, I met him in Azerbaijan. I asked him who threw the pizza at Sir Alex. He said no comment. I tried. It's probably the best bit
of an anticlimax.
Best bit of investigative journalism I've ever done.
Was that better or worse when you met Stuart Taylor?
That's for another episode, I think.
Wait, did you travel to Azerbaijan specifically to see Cesc Fabregas, or?
It was for work. It was for the Europa League final in 2019. Yeah. That was my first trip for SportsPro, I believe. I think I peaked, actually. I went on the Caspian Sea. It was lovely. And then turned in a 500-word piece. Honestly, got away with murder.
That's what it's all about.
Just made you have a passport, Ed.
Don't know where it is, actually. That'll do for part one, but before we return for part two, Michael Long, SportsPro's Director of Key Projects, is here to tell you a little bit about Impact X, a new annual initiative produced by SportsPro in collaboration with Sportquake. Spotlights the most impactful, creative and effective partnerships in sport. So take it away, Mike.
Ever wondered what makes a sports partnership truly stand out? Sports marketing is more than just numbers. Sure, data helps, but creativity is the true secret ingredient that unlocks marketing effectiveness. It's not just about slapping logos everywhere. It's about creating value and genuine meaning through original ideas and best-in-class execution. Great partnerships find that sweet spot between cultural relevance, emotional impact, and business results. And when it works, it's unforgettable. Imagine a skincare brand teaming up with a rugby club, or a tyre company aligning with a basketball competition. At first glance, these might seem like odd pairings, right? But that's where the magic happens. So what makes a partnership cut through? Well, it's about unpredictability. When something catches you off guard, that's when your brain takes notice. Dull ads are said to cost the marketing industry millions of dollars in additional media spend, whereas bold ideas, when executed well, have the power to deliver meaningful ROI. By tapping into what fans care about, from music to fashion, or even the memes they share on social media and private chat groups, brands unlock deeper connections. In the world of sports, where fan loyalty runs deep, it's the brands who are willing to take risks that have the greatest impact. Want to understand the insight and inspiration behind the most impactful, creative, and effective partnerships in sport? Check out Impact X and explore the full casebook today.
If anyone's going to have too much hair, it's me.
You look like you've made 100 appearances in Serie A.
And you look like you made 100 appearances in the National League.
Oh.
Sorry, Dano. Welcome back to part two of the SportsPro Podcast, where we're picking out some of the highlights from last month's SportsPro Investment Summit. Sam, we've spoken about Como. Who else did you chat to?
I spoke to, so basically people might not be that familiar with a company called BIA Sports Group, but if you didn't realise, they are actually the investment group that owns Sunderland, who are, of course, well, probably have started playing in the Premier League again now after securing promotion back to the top flight through the playoffs last campaign. And yeah, so the other property, sports property within BSG's portfolio is World Supercross, but as Tom Burwell revealed exclusively to us during this interview, they're also now incubating the first ever Rugby Sevens franchise league. So yeah, we're going to hear from him about that.
We at BSG at the moment are incubating and launching in 2026 the first ever Rugby Sevens franchise league. Rugby Sevens is it's a sport I've got a lot of history with, but equally it's incredible, right? Rugby invented its short form version of the sport hundreds of years before the other mainstream sports had done 2020 and so on. But at the very top of the sport, they'd also created a situation where to go and watch that takes 3 days. So you might be on Friday morning, watch the first game, finals not until Sunday, and that kind of broke the distribution model for media, broke storytelling, means that actually the costs of doing so were that ticketing were not just about what takes place on the field, but you're having to create this huge festival around it. What we really want to bring it back to is short form, which is 3-4 hours on a Thursday evening with the very best be the best in a franchise model, but that supplements and supports that World Series. And that's the important thing, that Rugby Sevens is an Olympic sport. Where's the heartland? So we're likely actually to have our 7 tournaments in Europe in 2026, even though it will be a global league with franchises from around the world. What we're also really interested in, what we're exploring with IP that you would traditionally know in other sports. How can I can't say what, but let's say how can a football club compete against an NFL team via the vehicle of Rugby Sevens? And because, going back to a completely different point is, so many of these sports businesses now, as you begin to look to kind of grow your revenues and grow your fandoms, you might be capped out as where you are as a football team. You might be capped out as where you are in as a cricket team, for example. And what can you do via other sports? Whether that's just ownership groups and not the actual utilisation of particular IP, or whether in some case it is that do we get to see Team X play Team Y?
Sam, there's no money in rugby at the league level unless it's in France. Change my mind.
It's not my job to change your mind, it's Tom Burwell's. Yeah, it was an interesting conversation, and it's obviously still in the very early stages. They've secured a 7-figure investment, which they've financed themselves alongside some other investors that they haven't named. But I thought probably the most interesting or newsworthy thing to come out of that interview was sort of what he was discussing towards the end there was using existing IP within sport, which is obviously business speak for teams that already exist, that they're sort of targeting to buy into this competition. And the example he used there was obviously very hypothetical, but an NFL team versus, say, a Premier League team through the medium of Rugby Sevens. In another part of that interview, he also referenced Craven Cottage as a venue that they could target, which, yeah, I think that's probably about right for the target audience. But I don't know what you got. Do you think it'll work? What do you guys think?
Craven Cottage is near the best Wetherspoons in London, yeah.
Steve will be there.
No, I think it's so. Again, rugby financially, there's a lot of issues there to address. As a sport as a whole, there's talk of another franchise league in the form of R360, which there are very few details known about the source of funding, who's going to participate, the teams. It's all very much up in the air. There's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of briefing in the newspapers. I think a franchise sevens league could work. I think if you look at the existing sevens circuit, yes, they've had to create that festival style atmosphere. It's over 3 days. You go one day, you don't see the conclusion of that tournament. It's not necessarily satisfying, and there are people there just for a good day out. There's nothing wrong with that, but their attention isn't necessarily on the sport. But if you take teams that mean something and you put together players together from different nationalities, I think that could be really interesting. If it's done in the summer, for example, players who aren't internationals or not involved in certain competitions just coming together, I think it could be an interesting proposition. His point about using existing IP, that was started to lose me a little bit there. I think, yes, you have those multi-sport organisations in Europe, for example. Bayern Munich, Real Madrid also have different teams other than football. In England, we've tried that. I think Everton had a basketball team. Plymouth had a basketball team.
Forest do it now? Bristol City?
Yeah, that's something that they've tried to do. There's also been some netball crossovers.
Forest is netball, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Bristol City, yeah.
I see the logic. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be it's great. It's great winning idea as suggested. But I think the concept of franchise sevens, I'm much more interested in that than I am a franchise 15-a-side doing a global circuit.
I think also they've sort of floated the idea of it starting in August on Thursday nights, and it would sort of, I think it would be weekly. There is, I don't know, I can't think of loads that happens already in that slot, so it could be attractive to broadcasters as well. He did kind of say some other stuff around kind of media distribution and the usual stuff that you hear around. We can't rely on the traditional models, and went into some stuff around like microtransactions, and way over my head, to be honest. But but I think from that perspective, it could work from a scheduling side of things as well. I think like the proof will ultimately be in kind of what appetite they see during this process now that they're taking the franchises to market, whether people actually believe in the idea or not. But it's definitely that sort of existing IP bit that I'm unsure of. I appreciate the rationale, because you look at Live Golf and you look at even like the TGL as another example. Like no one has any reason, and even the 100 who we were talking about before, like no one has any reason to care about those teams necessarily. So that's probably where he's getting at with that. Yeah,
I think city-based or region-based, national-based franchises would be more effective. I do appreciate his point. I think it's an interesting idea. Like I said, I'm just not as convinced at this stage. And just to further your point, there appears to be a concerted effort within rugby to turn Thursday into a TV slot for rugby. The Premiership Rugby, I think, is going to have at least looking into Thursday games this season. And the Six Nations will kick off on a Thursday because they don't want to clash with the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. So that could be another way to establish that as a potential time slot. So, yeah, lots of interesting ideas there.
My mind started wandering and thinking of franchise names, sort of the London Spear Tackles, or sort of the...
Can't say it.
the
London Weatherspoons.
The Manchester Knock-Ons.
Are you just thinking of anything you can...
Those are the two rugby terms I've got off the top of my head.
The Rocket is the Weatherspoons in question, so London Rockets. An amalgamation of the Trent Rockets in the 100 with London Spirit. There you go.
The London 2-for-1s.
Yeah. London Curry Club, there we go.
It's probably a good place to end that conversation.
I think so. We're going down a rabbit hole if we're not careful. Well, not that we already have. Josh, you've been waiting patiently in the wings. Who did you collar at the Investment Summit?
I spoke to Justin Fishkin, who is the co-founder and chief executive of World Sevens Football. A bit of background about Justin. This is his sort of first sports venture. He was previously a Goldman Sachs banker and worked at some sustainable tech startups prior to taking on this sort of step towards World Sevens Football. And for those who aren't aware of what it is, it's a short-form women's football competition. They held their first event before the Women's Champions League final in Estoril, Portugal. One of their biggest unique selling points is the prize pot. They had $5 million on offer for all the teams, $2.5 million going to the winning team, which is the highest prize pot for any women's football competition, currently higher than UEFA's Women's Champions League. So it sets a new benchmark in terms of that payout. Yeah, I spoke to him about what they did in terms of creating a unique atmosphere for the event, and whether he thinks how confident he is that this will be a worthwhile investment going forward. I'd love for you to talk about the event experience. You have the beautiful background of Estoril, Portugal, so that's that sells itself in some ways, but also, I guess, making it feel like it's not just a typical football event. I mean, what was that like in terms of putting the atmosphere together, and that this was something different and should be treated differently?
Like if you go to an NWSL game in the States now, one thing that always really rang true to me was how the players, it's differentiated how the players engage with the fans. And it's a different demographic, right? It feels more intimate in some way. And we really wanted to draw on that and make it even more intimate and bring sort of the fans and the players together. And one of the best pieces of feedback I heard in an interview post-match was a player who said, I feel safe here, my friends are in the stands, and I feel like a kid again. And that, our whole thesis was if you create joy for the players, then world-class football will follow and the fans will love it. We basically built a stadium within a stadium, like cabanas on one side and the grandstand on the other. And I really have to credit Jen, my co-founder, who really dialed in on what that experience would be, and I think people loved it. This investment is certainly about making a return. We believe we're creating a platform that is going to pay out the highest rewards to women's football teams, and it's by aggregating sponsorship and viewership across the platform, and that creates enterprise value. This wouldn't be possible in the men's game at this stage. I'm sure we'll continue to see small-sided formats in the men's game, but sort of players, the best players in the world, deserve to be getting paid more. They deserve platforms to build their brands. The clubs deserve to be able to build their women's sides and platforms that are committed to doing that. And we just saw an opportunity in the market to assist them, because we think all ships rise together in the women's football world.
We've spoken about the 100. We've spoken about Project 7. We've now got World Sevens football. A host of other short format digital first sports properties that have emerged in recent years, the Baller League and the T100 and triathlon and a few others that spring to mind. There's a theme developing here, Josh.
There is, yeah. One of the things, and the longer interview is on our SportsPro's YouTube channel for people who want to catch that. But he talked about sort of wanting to capture a younger audience, and obviously, obviously he and I'm sure other media companies are aware of sort of the quote unquote shorter attention span that younger sports fans have, and this event is sort of targeted for that. But also in terms of just creating a new environment for these women's football players to thrive in something that's a bit more snappier and a bit more energetic and buzzy. You heard him talk about sort of the atmosphere and wanting to create it like a sort of a festival sort of environment. So yeah, I'm sure, and we're talking about sort of the Sevens thing. I'm sure they'll want to create a very unique atmosphere sort of at the ground, Craven Cottage potentially. And I'm sure that World Sevens football, that's what they're striving to do with their future stuff.
I think the interesting thing with this one, he actually referenced it in the interview there, Justin. He was talking about how this probably not sort of, this isn't something you could probably do in the men's game at the moment. And when we've seen these sort of smaller sided, different format tournaments emerge in, I guess, men's football so far, it's been sort of influencer led. They've had to go down different routes to get talent to do that. This obviously isn't quite on the same scale as like Baller League or Kings League, where it's rewriting the rules entirely, but it is going about it in a new way. And I think that's quite an interesting thing, because they're also using, they're using the clubs as part of that, and that kind of has the potential to be a little bit disruptive and sort of challenge the norm, especially when they're offering so much money. And obviously that first event happened in the build up to the Champions League final, so it's going to be interesting. We've obviously had that one event so far, and I imagine they wanted to get that one done so that sponsors could see it, fans could see it, and they had something to kind of take to market a little bit more. I guess like going forward, like what is their calendar going to look like? How are they going to get like a regular commitment? I feel like that's going to be the biggest thing that holds them back, is just kind of they're going to have to still work around those existing structures. The interesting thing will be like if there are eventually clashes, like how the clubs themselves prioritise that. If they sort of look at it and think, there's more money on offer in this Sevens tournament, and I'm going to go and do that instead of, I'm going to send people over there instead of to a league game or something. I don't know what the example could be, but it's definitely like an interesting project. I think we need to see more of it to know how sustainable it's going to be. I imagine there's that pot of money that they launched with. There's only so much of it, and there's only so long they're going to be able to offer a 5 million prize pool. So eventually they're going to have to start getting some of those sponsors through the door and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Steve, The Zone is the league's global broadcast production, sales and marketing partner. It's a bit of a mouthful. Interesting move from them.
I think it fits in with the wider strategy. They've been very receptive to these disruptor leagues. Partly I think it's because they're trying to get as many people on their platform as possible, and this might have a younger audience as well, so they can get them into the ecosystem and monetize them through other ways. And also it's content. They have the content, they can build it on a digital platform, and streaming, as Josh said earlier, this is intended at a younger audience that are more likely to use streaming platforms. So very in line with them. They've got even things like they've been in with Live Golf. They've shown plenty of influencer events. So yeah, fits in with their strategy. Just to echo other points made, the fact they're using existing brands is very interesting. As Sam said, I don't know how long they can keep up that prize fund long enough to force clubs to make that decision. I think there's a gap in the schedule. Certainly there's the financial incentive there, given that the money in women's football isn't as it's not lucrative as the men's yet. I think this, if you look at a similar case, could be unrivaled in women's basketball. Although again, that's using new IP. That's not using the existing teams. But some of the players are having to make decisions about what they prioritise, not necessarily unrivaled, but with playing in Europe, for example. So it's not necessarily the teams, but players making it. How long that can coexist for as WNBA grows remains to be seen. I think could be a similar case with this if it continues.
Yeah, it gives them leverage as well. That's what Unrivaled has done in the US. Obviously, it works very differently here in Europe compared to compared to the US in terms of labour and stuff like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know, Josh, if he said anything, if you asked him much about how they see themselves, fitting within that ecosystem, if they see themselves as disruptive to it or sort of contributing to it. It sounds like it's obviously it's for the benefit of the players, I guess, is what came across in that clip there. But I don't know if he said much about, how they're going to collaborate with the wider ecosystem of football and other stakeholders within that.
I think they see themselves as sort of coexisting within the current ecosystem. They made sure that Arsenal and Barcelona, for example, the two teams that made the Champions League final, maybe behind the scenes, maybe they verbally agreed to sign up for the tournament, but once they were confirmed for the final, obviously then they were not included in the World Sevens football lineup. So they've been very careful, I guess they were very careful with this initial lineup in terms of picking out teams that, I guess, season-wise it fits their schedule. And I know that he mentions it in the interview that later on their plan is for the second event to be in the Americas with a bunch of 8 teams, I assume, based in the Americas. So it'll be a completely different lineup. So I think they see themselves as sort of coexisting and finding gaps within the calendar. It's interesting, they sort of talked to FIFA, and FIFA apparently don't have sort of jurisdiction over the 7-a-side game, so to speak, and they've been in contact with UEFA, so they are talking to the existing stakeholders and are not trying to, I guess, disrupt they are disrupting in a sense, but they're not doing it in a sort of backhanded backdoor way. I think they see themselves as sort of coexisting with the current calendar and giving those teams an extra financial reward and an extra competition to go for. But yeah, as you said, if we have, say, I don't know, an FA Cup final and a women's sevens football thing at the same time, that'll be interesting if there's an English team involved to see which way they would go.
Steve, you were thrown a microphone and like a caged tiger, you were unleashed on the stage. Who did you speak to and what did you find out?
So I chaired a panel about sports tech investment with Ron Malhotra from SportsTech, which is I guess they're specialists in sports technology. They advise and I think they do some investing. Paul Hurigan from Ryan Sports Ventures, who invest in Bournemouth, among other entities, and Fergus Bell from the Players Fund, which is a VC fund which has athlete investors, but not limited to just sports tech, but it helps them find opportunities as part of that organisation. So we discussed various things about the state of sports technology, the areas of interest, areas that perhaps were overhyped, areas of opportunity. It was interesting to have 3 people with very different perspectives. So, for example, Paul was perhaps more of a strategic investor because he was looking at technologies that can help Bournemouth. Ron, for example, he's perhaps got his finger on the pulse with trends and areas of opportunity, people that he speaks, they work with as clients. And then Fergus again looks at sports technology as a investment opportunity among many. And he had a very interesting point about they don't necessarily look for technology that just has applications in sport. They look for technologies that can be used in sport but have wider consumer use cases, because that's a much bigger customer base. think of sport, the sports industry at the end of the day. If you look at professional sport, it's a relatively small industry. There's only a certain amount of buyers certain amount of organisations with enough resource to spend a lot of money on technology. So tech that can be used in industries, or perhaps with a more leisure application. So gyms, tennis clubs, that sort of thing. Pitch booking tech probably has a wider scale than just professional sport. So again, as I said at the top, it's an area of sports investment I know a bit more than other areas, but I still learn plenty from speaking to those guys.
Yeah, great stuff. And investment is just a drop in the ocean of what we cover here at SportsPro Towers. So to get you up to speed on all the important headlines, here's SportsPro's community lead, Chris Stone, with a segment that I can't say, but someone else can for me. It's time for the
Sports Biz Blitz. It's quite easy to say, actually.
Thanks, Ed. I'm Chris Stone, the community lead at SportsPro Media. I'm also the co-host of the Streamtime Sports Podcast alongside our CEO, Nick Meacham. We're back with another round of the Sports Biz Blitz, where I have 30 seconds to read off as many news stories as I can. No fluff, all news. Last week I hit a record of 7, but I do want to say I was told that I wasn't reading fast enough, but I want to make it clear that my staff said that I need to slow down so that it would make a good news story. So in the words of the urban philosopher, Dwayne Carter, aka Lil Wayne, I ain't talking fast, you just listening slow. So let's see if I can beat my record. Kicking things off, Crystal Palace loses their CAS appeal against UEFA to save themselves from Europa League demotion. Meanwhile, Nike posted the lowest income since 2020's Trump tariff hit sports brands, creating uncertainty. UFC makes groundbreaking news, leaving ESPN and pay-per-view behind for a $7.7 billion deal with Paramount. Back in the UK, BBC brings back boxing for the first time, returning in 20 years. Our Spanish neighbors also confirmed Premier Sports and Disney Plus as their UK broadcasters. Skydance finally completes their $8 billion Paramount merger. And speaking of billions, Formula One revenue hits $1.2 billion in Q2, and with a bit of help with Brad Pitt. Across the pond, the US Open prize money hits record $90 million for 225. Oh my gosh, please tell me I broke my record this time. Please, please, please. It's 8? Oh yes, let's go. I told you I'm here to break records. Dude, every time on the Sports Biz Blitz. Can't wait for the next one. I'm out.
Thank you, Chris, and make sure to sign up to the SportsPro Daily newsletter if you haven't already. It means you'll get your daily briefing of all the essential news across the sports industry, the pick of our in-depth features, and lots more. All the good stuff, basically. That'll do for today, I think. Anyone got any exciting weekend plans?
Still trying to move.
Sam's still unpacking.
Still unpacking, yeah. I have now tried one of the local pubs, though, the Great North Wood. So if anyone wants to say hello, I'll probably be in there fairly frequently.
Josh, save us.
I don't know. It'll be spontaneous, to be honest. I sometimes just go into
I
weekends
love
like not knowing how they'll
So
start and how
Gen
to
Z.
end. Yeah. So who knows? I'll try do something that has an interesting story for the next time I'm on.
Yeah, well, no pressure. We look forward to hearing about that. But just a reminder to our listeners, do send your questions in to editor@sportspromedia.com if you want to hear more from the SportsPro Podcast Network as well. Make sure to check out Streamtime and New Era. But until next time, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Ed.
And thank you, Sam.
Cheers, chaps.
Thanks for tuning in. The SportsPro Podcast is produced by Dan O'Ling. Our executive producer is Manny Gill.